And I think as I go through this website, there should be some really tangible takeaways for you to be able to say, "Oh, I could check that thing." I've really tried to put this together in a way that, any website owner who's interested in understanding what potential risks there are with their website, they should be able to like figure these things out with the tools that I'll walk you through and show you how to use.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to an A2 hosting show. We've got a great webinar today. We've had Ryan Sullivan of sitecare.com on before. Smashing good webinar. Everybody was so eager. We were like, Ryan, will you come back and do this? He's going to do something really interesting. He's going to show how he works live, and I'll let him talk to you more about that. But the first one was called Site Health, gave some really good, great information. Um, Ryan is talented on many different things, but when he talks about this level of care for a WordPress site, I always lean in and listen for good reason. I'll share some notes about Site Care. They've got a Site Health plugin. It's a free plugin on the WordPress.org repo. You can go install that and check that out. I'll be asking Ryan from later on too, what cool things has he got going on at Site Care and the plugin. But Ryan Sullivan, sitecare.com, I think your official title is Chief of Staff, but that probably means you do all the important things. But thank you for coming back and sharing on WordPress site health. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Really happy to be here. Like Corey said, I'm the chief of staff at SiteCare. We've got a great team of WordPress pros there. We do WordPress support, optimization, ongoing maintenance. Really like uh, it's starting to get into accessibility improvements as well. So basically, all of the general upkeep, iteration, improvement that's needed to keep a website running smoothly. That's what our company, that's the problem our company solves. And so today, like Corey said, a couple months ago, we had a webinar talking about site health in general, more informational, educational. And today I wanted to do kind of a practical application. I wanted to go through a real website and talk through, like, show you what I like, not just me, what our whole team looks at when we bring a new client into site care services. So what are the things that we're looking for? What are the things that are potential red flags or yellow flags or green flags? What are the things that raise alert, and what are the things that we, that we're evaluating to determine, hey, what are the long term needs of this website going to be? And I think as I go through this website, there should be some really tangible takeaways for you to be able to say, "Oh, I could check that thing." I've really tried to put this together in a way that, any website owner who's interested in understanding what potential risks there are with their website, they should be able to like figure these things out with the tools that I'll walk you through and show you how to use. So, um, first, before we get into this specific website example, I want to thank the people who submitted their websites. I ended up choosing one that we're going to roll with. Um, and I know that, to whoever this person is, I'm sure you're watching now. I just want to be super clear. Like, these are the types of issues we see with all of the websites we bring on. So there's no like judgment attached to anything that we're going to be talking about or going through. These are very common WordPress issues. And I guarantee that, 90% of the people who are watching this are going to go to their own website and find some of the same issues. So I want to thank that person for being willing to, put up their website for review because I know that's probably not an easy thing to do. I've created a local copy of the website. What that means is I basically set up a copy of the website for testing purposes because as I go through things with you here, I don't like these aren't the types of changes that I would automatically make on a live website, just because that can cause issues if it goes untested. So this is all in a testing environment. I would encourage you, if you're going to you know be going the check part, you can go through on your live website. But if you're going to start testing changes or removing things or changing things up, doing that in a testing environment is always kind of the best way to go there. So I'm going to share my screen. This is, like I said, this is a local copy of this website. This is we're here in the WordPress dashboard for the Equine Events website. I've got a couple of plugins installed here that were not initially installed, and we'll go through each of those. We'll go through each of those one by one. But as soon as we bring on a website, the first place we look to find out, hey, is there something that we need to pay attention to here? Is we go to the site health area. So if you go to Tools, Site Health, this screen, or these screens, I guess, there's a couple of different screens here, will give you a lot of really important information about the website. So, um, any like critical or major issues that need to be addressed are going to show up here on this first screen, on the status screen. So we'll go through this quickly. Then we're going to go through the info screen and talk through that a little bit as well. So you'll see the critical issues that it has flagged here. It says WordPress update is available 6.7.2. Now, the good news is with this website, if you go to the About page on WordPress, it'll tell you the version of WordPress that you're running. So you can see this is 6.7.1. I know because this is the business I'm in that 6.7.2 literally came out yesterday. So this is not like this is yes, this website should be updated for security reasons, but this person has not been neglecting this website in any way. They've been on top of their updates. It's just brand new, right? So that needs to be updated. It also says there are themes that need to be updated. If you expand, you can see um you can see it says there are two themes that need to be updated. And then auto load options could affect performance. Now, we're going to dig into auto load options quite a bit in our review because that came up in a couple of different places as I reviewed this site. But that is essentially what that means is there are database calls that are happening on every page of the website that may not need to be. So that's something that we can look into. And then it has some recommended improvements. You should remove inactive plugins. Even inactive plugins can be potential security vulnerabilities. Deleting those completely is a good idea. A scheduled event has failed. So this is saying a scheduled event, this regenerate post assets, and that's, this is some kind of function name, failed to run. It says your site still works, but this may indicate that scheduling posts or automated updates may not work as intended. So we may we may dig into that a little bit if we have some time. And then this says block unauthorized XML RPC requests. What this is suggesting is, and this is way too much jargon already, but XML RPC requests are basically WordPress has a built-in, we'll call it an antenna that other services can call um, to make changes to your website or to learn information to your website. And it's become kind of a known thing among hackers that, you can send a lot of requests all at once to this antenna, and that can use up a lot of resources on your website and potentially take your website offline. So the site health tool is recommending that that antenna basically be taken down so that you don't have that vulnerable access point anymore. All right. So info. So again, we're kind of in the learning stage here. We don't want to go in and start making a bunch of changes. We're really just kind of trying to get the lay of the land. So the info here, we have WordPress. It tells us again the version, the language that's being used, the URL of the site, the permalink structure that's being used. Is HTTPS enabled? Some of those types of things. Also, we get an idea of the size of our website. So I'm sure there have been people who have said, like, who have gone through the experience of your web host contacts you, says, hey, your disk space is full, or you're above your plan limit, things like that. This is where you can kind of verify that. You can see how big is my WordPress directory? How big is my uploads directory? How big is uh, my database? And how big is this is the total installation size. So this is everything in your website all in one thing. The size of this website is very reasonable, like under 1 gigabyte for the whole website, including the database and everything. Very like relatively lightweight, to be honest, in terms of the types of sites I'll see day to day sometimes. Uh, Drop-ins, I don't think we really need to get into that right now. Active theme, so here's the name of the theme that's in use. We've got all the theme features, the parent theme. So Astra that's a really popular theme in WordPress, and then this is a child theme of the Astra theme. So that's what's active. And then we have a list of active plugins, everything that's installed on the site, as well as inactive plugins. And yep, for now, I think that is all I'm looking for on the info page. So nothing really stood out to me as a general, like an area of concern necessarily. As I look through this, it seems like this you know everything is in pretty good shape as far as the um as far as like the general architecture of the website is concerned. So let's look at plugins. We're gonna look at I could have just stayed on the info screen there, but let's go over to the plugin screen and look at the plugins that are installed on the website. So we've got A2 Optimized WP. This is the plugin from A2 that works in tandem with their server setup to serve a fast site. AAA Option Optimizer. It's a mouthful. This is a plugin that I installed, and we'll dig into what exactly that does. It's related to auto load options, so we'll get into that a little bit more later. AI powered quizzes. So there's like a quiz generator of some kind for quizzes on the website. Anti-spam. So this is a spam plugin to keep spam out of forums and comments and all those things. Astra Pro. This is essentially a page builder. i- it's add-ons for. Sorry, it's not a page builder. It's add-ons for the Astra theme for some of their premium features. Code Profiler, again, this is a plugin that I installed that will give us a picture of which plugins are using up resources. Contact Form 7 for their forms. Enable Media Replace, that allows them to replace an image rather than deleting it and uploading a new one. Some events calendar things here. Health check and troubleshooting. This is a plugin that's used to debug issues or troubleshoot issues. Lightspeed Cache, this is a performance thing. Login Press, this gives the site a nice login area. Manage WP, this is for managing the WordPress website remotely. Pretty Links, this is kind of a redirection plugin, but really has some tracking built in as well. Query Monitor, again, this is another plugin that I added. This will give us some information about the website and kind of what's happening under the hood. And then we've got Rank Math, an SEO plugin, an image optimization plugin, business directory, site kit. This gets Google Analytics and things connected. And then Smart Quiz Builder. This is related to the AI Quiz Builder. I think this is the main plugin, and then the AI piece is an add-on. Spectra is the page builder, or it adds some functionality to the block editor. And then a backup plugin, security plugin, and code snippet plugin, and Zapier integration. So there's some automation stuff passing from WordPress with this plugin. So again, like everything is mostly up to date, running, it's running very current versions. Like the things that are out of date are barely out of date. There's a tiny point release here. Astra Pro again, tiny point release. So again, like this site has been well maintained, like, for the most part, like, everything has been, um, like, they're staying on top of updates, there isn't really old code, everything that, we don't have time to get into it today, but if we really wanted to, we could go in and see like when these plugins were last updated to make sure they're still actively supported by the author. That's another thing to look at is, hey, if this plugin hasn't been updated in a year, that's a potential area of risk, just because that's typically a sign of some type of neglect, right? Like the author either has moved on to other projects or just hasn't had time to stay on top of it. So if you do go and look at the plugin page from the author and it hasn't been updated for quite a while, that's another thing to keep in mind. All right. So the other thing that I'm kind of thinking about when I'm looking at plugins is which of these is the most likely to use up resources on the website? Because every single one of these, there's a lot of misinformation that goes around about plugins. Like, having too many plugins is a problem. It's like not necessarily. Like we manage sites that run 200 plus plugins, but they're all very simple single focused plugins that have one job and do that job well, right? So it's I'm really looking for the types of plugins that are kind of I'll call them the Swiss Army knife plugins, like plugins that are doing a lot of heavy work and have a lot of functionality built into them. Those are the ones that are potential flags for me. So, uh events plugins in general, they have a lot going on. They create a lot of data on a website. So I'm not saying Events Manager in particular is using up a lot of resources, but that's something that would be on my radar just because that type of plugin is doing a lot. Um, that's really business directory, same idea, right? It's doing quite a bit in terms of the amount of data it's managing, the amount of URLs it creates, um, some of the functional things under the hood. So that's another area that I might focus in on. And then the quiz builder is one that draws attention to me only because I'm not familiar with it. Like, it's not something I've seen or tested myself before, and it's making a lot of promises in the plugin description there. So it's something that would be on my radar as, uh, hey, is this a tool? Is this a plugin that's going to use up a lot of resources? So the cool thing is that we can find out exactly which ones are using up resources. And the way that we can do that is by using this code profiler plugin. So this is a really useful tool to give you a high level view of on each page of your website which plugin is using resources. So let's check that out. I've got code profiler installed already, and what you can have it test several different things. So you can have it test stuff on the back end, but really we're most interested in the front end of the website. So let's look at the homepage, for example. So this is the homepage here, and we're gonna have it. We can test by people who are Basically, this says, do you want this to be tested as somebody who is logged in or somebody who is logged out? Which we won't get all the way into it, but when caching is concerned, if you're logged in, WordPress does not cache the experience. And so you can sometimes have performance issues with users who are logged in that don't exist with users who are logged out. But like I said, we're not going to get all the way into that today, but we want to test it as an unauthenticated user, just somebody who's new to the website. This is the active theme, so we're going to leave that, and then we can choose the user agent if we'd like to. So let's just go ahead and leave it as Firefox. That's fine. And then we're just going to call this homepage test. We can name it whatever we want, but just so we remember later. Homepage test February 12th. And then we click start. Well, there's some advanced options here, but we're just going to leave it as is and say start profiling. It's going to do a quick run through here. Just takes a couple of seconds typically. And when it's done, it gives us a clear breakdown of what on the website is using up resources. So, and this may change from page load to page load, but this gives us a good idea of kind of what the biggest resource users are on the website. Um, so Astra, like the theme itself, kind of makes sense that it's using up a decent amount of resources. It it's the whole front end of the website, so for it to be using up 11% of the resources needed, um, seems reasonable to me. Rank Math SEO, the security plugin, that that's kinda that's on the high side of what I would want from any kind of security tool, to have it use up 10% of all the resources that are needed for the page load. That's something that raises a little bit of alert for me. The page builder, Astra Pro. So again, like these are all kind of the whole front end of the website. Then next in line, Events Manager. SiteKit by Google is a little bit of a surprise. Um, Mainly because mostly what it does is load your tracking scripts, but that's good information for us to have. And then goes all the way down. And you can see like which of, it gives you some details too, right? Like total execution time for this is it's really small to see on your side probably, but it says 5.25 seconds there. So you get an idea of how long it takes for this whole string of jobs to execute. And we don't need to get into the disk and file statistics. That's not particularly useful here. But then that same tool, you can run it on. We only ran that on the homepage, right? So we can run that on any any page on the website. So let's if we run the same test on the blog, we'll the idea here is that if we run this on enough pages with enough different scenarios, that'll start to show us the trends, right? That'll start to show us, hey, this one plugin is yeah, so see that's really interesting. Like loading the blog, the WordFence security plugin used more resources than even the theme. So you can start to see as you test from one page to the next, what are the plugins that are consistently using up my server resources. So that's yeah, so that's useful for us to understand and know, and then we can make decisions around that. We can say, is this the security plugin that makes the most sense to us? Are there other ways for us to uh, you know, implement security in a way that's not going to use up so many server side resources? So yeah, so wanted to bring Code Profiler to your attention and kind of show you how that works, um and it has some other nice things in here, but we won't get all the way into it. I think just initial graph of showing which module is using up resources is a really useful place to start. All right, so we have a good idea from our plugins, like what may or may not be using up resources. So let's take a look at the theme. So with the theme, we have this is great. They're using a child theme. If you have a commercial theme like an Astra or Elementor or Divi or any of those popular themes, it makes sense to um it doesn't make sense to, it's best practice to have a child theme on top of that so that when updates are released for the parent theme, the changes aren't overwritten. So, if you are using one of these, commercial themes, definitely make sure you have a child theme so that if customizations need to be made to the theme, they can be made to the child theme directly and not to the parent theme. Because if they're made to the parent theme and this update gets processed, you will lose whatever changes you had before. You don't want that. But yeah, for the most part, everything looks good here from a theme perspective. I mentioned it before, but this theme does need to be updated, but it's barely out of date. So this would be an update that we'd process and then but the setup in general looks great. So the next thing that caught my eye and that always catches my eye, this is the most popular one, this code snippets plugin, but there are a lot of similar plugins like simple CSS and JS is another one I see all the time. But there are these plugins that basically give you a place in your WordPress dashboard to insert code. And they can be really handy, if you just, because if you're doing any kind of marketing on your website, or if you're working with any kind of third-party tools, they always, give you some little HTML snippet or JavaScript snippet to paste into your website. Tools like this code snippets tool, make it very easy to do that. But one of the things that I see all the time is that this is done um, without understanding this kind of the scope of the change that's being made. So let's look at a couple examples. So if I open code snippets here, there are I can see four different code snippets that are running here. And it's nice because you can like turn these on and off, and um, you have some nice control over some of these things. Uh, but let's look at, for example, so this is custom events grid snippet. So what this little code snippet is doing is it's making it so we can, on the front end of the website, uh, might take a second here to load on my end, but it loads a little it loads this grid, right? This grid of all these events. So that's what the code is doing. And you can see it has this code here that does everything, and then it spits it out into a short code that then gets added to this page. Well, what I one of the things I saw right away is, and we'll get into this a little bit more too, is I have this plugin installed called Query Monitor. And Query Monitor is measuring all how long each of the actions on any page take. And so you can see, right, it displays everything right in the admin bar here, and you can see it says Ajax deprecated. So what's happening here, and it traces right back to this little snippet. You can see there's an Ajax thing here in this code. But what you need to, without getting all the way into it, what you need to understand about an Ajax request is that it can't be cached. So it doesn't matter how much caching is, like if you have a great caching plugin or a great host or any of those types of things, if you're loading an Ajax function on the front end of the website, all of that caching is essentially broken. Like none of it will actually do the job you're intending it to do. So that's one thing that like really kind of really jumped off the page is there's some great caching plugins installed on this website with A2 optimized and Lightspeed, but they're not actually able to do their job because of that Ajax request that loads this grid. Another thing with code snippets in general is you'll see the location here is run everywhere. And that is the default setting for this plugin. So anytime that you are adding a snippet of code to your website, whether it's intended or not, it's being loaded on every single page of the website. And those little every piece of code is a little job. And as you start as you start loading those on every single page, those jobs start to stack up. And that's when the performance of the site starts to decrease, because most of the time, like when you have a snippet of code, it probably doesn't need to load on every page. It's probably intended to be used in one place or not and not another. And so just be aware when you're using or seeing these code snippet plugins, you want to, if you're going to be using them, use them in a way that is only loading code where it's essential and where it's actually needed, and not across the entire website. All right. So I think we're good for code snippet plugins. Again, kind of main takeaways are just be aware of where that code is loading, and also just really want to encourage you like not to kind of it's very tempting to want your website to do a thing, Google for the answer or ChatGPT the answer, it spits you back code, it gives you back code, and then you You can just paste it in the plugin and voila, it's working. But there's risks associated with that, right? Like there's issues that you may run into farther down the line by taking that approach of just looking for it's just a matter of understanding, like, is this an expensive function? Is this something that is going to use up a lot of resources? And if it is, like, you can decide, I'm okay with it using up a lot of resources because it's an important thing for my website, but then does it need to load across the entire website, or do you only need it in, specific areas? So, something to keep in mind. Alright, let's get into the database. So, this is we saw it at the beginning, but the database was relatively small. I think it was around 100 megabytes. That's not like, that's very reasonable. That's a very reasonably sized database, but if you'll also remember, we also saw the warning about the auto load options and how they may impact performance. So, the best analogy I could think of for auto load options was somebody like a so think of a kitchen, a kitchen scenario. You have your chef and you have your staples. You have the things that are always going to be needed. You have your salt, pepper, olive oil. Like, these are the things that you want to have front and center, that you just need to have available for no matter what type of cooking you're doing. Those are what auto load options are intended to be. So, it's the things that the website needs to have at hand immediately, that can be available on every single page load. Now, and so and they are auto load options are loaded on every single page of the site. Now, when you have an increase of auto load options like this means that the sous chef put zucchini and cinnamon and a whole bunch of other nonsense you don't need every single time on your station ready for you. And what ends up happening is, like, you're running out of space on your station. The stuff you actually need is getting harder to get to, and you don't have a good way. You have too much in front of you to, like, be efficient in the way that you're working. So, um, that's what's happening with auto load options. So that's why I installed this AAA option optimizer plugin. Uh, it does a really nice job of basically giving you a really easy to understand view of what auto-loaded options exist and what kind of toll they're taking on your site. So, let's see, we've got how yeah, so you can see, like, there's 25 per page and there's 42 pages of auto load options here. So there's quite a few, but I'm not really concerned with the ones that are using up zero point 0.0 size and kill it. Like, it would be nice to be able to get rid of all those, but let's sort this by size so we can see the ones that are the biggest, and then we can make for each of these options, we can make some decisions. We can either remove it completely or we can delete it. We can remove it from auto load, which means this option is still going to exist, but it's not going to be loaded on every single page by default. So the option this is a non-destructive change, but deleting the option is a destructive change. That means I'm going to delete the option from the database completely so it's not accessible via autoload or otherwise. So this is a type of thing that you want to, you know, one, do in a testing area first, but also understand what it is you're actually deleting if you're going to delete the option. So, really, like, this is the part that gets a little bit confusing, is these option names really don't mean anything, right? Like, they are just these random text strings. So what you wanna do is you can just it's this works pretty flawlessly, is if you just put the function name, into Google, or an LLM, you're almost always going to be, given, uh, a result. Even if it's not, I mean, this one's nice because it literally matched the plugin that is generating that option, as the first result, but usually you'll at least find a forum thread or something that gives you a breadcrumb to determine what it is that's creating this database option. So for this one, this plugin, ironically, is a performance plugin. And it has, like, we've talked before about what are the things you want to look for when you're choosing a plugin from the repository, and you say, oh, well, it has over 50,000 installs. It's updated frequently. I look at the ratings and it's got 392 five-star reviews. Like, this is a well-regarded performance plugin, but the reality is when you dig into it, it's actually creating a bunch of it's creating a whole bunch of auto load options that are not that shouldn't be in place. And here's the real kicker. This plugin isn't even installed on this website anymore. So this is a plugin that somebody wanted to speed up their website. They installed it, but, look at it here, like, this Seraphonite, whatever it is, like, it's not here anymore. Somebody wanted to install a performance plugin, make their site run faster. They installed it. It for one reason or another, they decided it wasn't what they needed or didn't do the job they wanted it to do, so they removed it, but it left behind these little gifts that are still impacting the performance of their website. And this is a very common thing we see, you know, and the reason I bring it up is because just to illustrate the point of, like, if you are going to test a plugin, if you are going to try something out for the first time, make sure that, well, one, like, first prize is to do it in an environment that's not going to impact your live website. Like, do it in a staging or a testing environment. But two, like, you will need to check after the fact is, was this plugin fully uninstalled or did it leave behind? Because, like, really the three biggest auto load options when we're sorting by size are all from that one plugin. This one as well, Integromat API options post. This is coming from the Make plugin that is still installed but is not active. So this Make connector plugin. So the biggest offenders to this auto load options, same with ad inserter. I think I saw something related to Elementor, which isn't on the site anymore. Tribe events calendar options. That's a different plugin than the events manager that's installed on the site. So there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff here that's slowing the website down that is literally, like, not even on, like, the code is not even on the website anymore. So that's something to, to keep in mind when you're installing a plugin. Like, does it have a full uninstall process that actually deletes the data, if you're no longer going to use it? And if it doesn't, these are changes that we can safely say, hey, like, this plugin is not installed anymore. So I can safely say, like, we can delete this option entirely. This same thing, this is coming from the same plugin. We can delete this option, and we can just get rid of them completely, and that's going to greatly improve. Just that one simple change is going to greatly improve the front end performance and the back end performance of this website. So a little bit of a cautionary tale, but something to keep in mind when you're, trying out different plugins. Is this it can leave this kind of stuff behind. All right. Looks like we got about 6 minutes left probably. So there's a couple of different things I wanna two more quick ideas. So we've talked about plugins, we've talked about the theme, we've talked about the database. Let's talk about caching configurations. So, caching configurations are an interesting thing because, there is such a thing as too much caching. Also, there is such a thing as having caching that, having multiple caching solutions that conflict with one another. So they're both trying to do the same job, and that ends up with actually slower performance. It would be nice if you could just kinda keep stacking them on top of each other and the site got faster and faster and faster, but that's not exactly how it comes together. So this site has a plugin called Lightspeed Cache, installed. And if we look at the, if we look at the, plugin page, there is something let's see here. If we look at the plugin page, we'll see a couple of different things, right? So, um, general features may be used by anyone with any web server, Lightspeed, Apache Nginx. Well, the way that you can find out what kind of web server your website is using is by going back to this site health page. And to be clear, like if like Nginx and Apache probably make up over 90% of like web servers that run WordPress. Um, Lightspeed has another small portion, and then you know Windows, Azure, IIS, those are another really small portion. But for the most part, if you're buying hosting from a company that says they are that they're kind of like built for WordPress, it's almost always using it's almost always using Apache or Nginx. But you can see by looking at the server details here, the web server here is Nginx. So if we go back to our plugin, whoops, I lost my page. If we go back to our Lightspeed plugin, like it says it's compatible with Nginx, so that's awesome. And then it lists all the features that it has, and then it says Lightspeed exclusive features. So these are features that um, only work if and when you're using the Lightspeed web server. Well, we're using Nginx here, so all of these things are no longer available to us. Like these features are not going to be these don't work on our web server configuration. And some of these uh are kind of important. So separate caching for desktop and mobile views, or automatic purge of related pages based on certain events. So that's, say for example, you make some changes to a page and then you click update to update the content. Well, this is saying that perhaps when that happens, the content on the front end of the website doesn't match the change you made in the back end until you go in and do a full page, until you do a full cache purge to make those changes live for everybody. So it's kind of just an extra step in your workflow, but something to be mindful of and be aware of. And so when I look at, Lightspeed Cache, uh, as a plugin, I mean, it really depends on the type of issue that is trying to be addressed here, but we've had a lot of success for Nginx-based websites. We've had a lot of success with WP Rocket, with WP Super Cache. Those are really great front-end caching tools that will work, that are like really built to work with Nginx. So with this website, I think, implementing one of those caching plugins instead of Lightspeed Cache would improve the front end performance quite a bit for the website. All right, so I got one more thing here, and uh, it's just something that kind of jumped out at me as I was looking at the dashboard here. I don't know anything about how much traffic this website gets or anything like that, but when I saw uh, I was looking at the rank math overview here, and when I saw the number of redirection hits that are happening here, that kind of really stood out to me. 636,000 redirection hits. One, there's going to be a database entry for every single one of those, so that's going to grow the size of your database, slow down your website. But it also means that people are, being rerouted to different pages, which can um, if there's too many redirects happening on your website, it doesn't send the right signal to Google. Like they're like, why are people jumping around so much? It should be kind of a straight jump from the search engine to the page that people are on. And so it may decrease your ranking signal and your ranking abilities as well. So this is just kind of the other thing I would look at is why are so many redirects happening? And is there something I can do to reduce the number of redirects? Yeah, is there something I can do to reduce the number of redirects? Because they add up and they have impact in places that you probably don't intend. So we didn't really get into Query Monitor. We could talk a lot about that particular plugin because it's extremely powerful and it's something we use for profiling code changes all the time. But I wanted to show you, you'll see that it turns red here. So this is saying that like this is taking a while. Like so 681 queries are happening on the page. It's a 41.3 megabytes and 2.28 seconds. But when you hover, you'll see there's a PHP errors and it says there's 38 warnings and 6 deprecations. So warnings with PHP, warnings and errors are things that are going to be cluttering your database logs, and they're more expensive than any kind of function that doesn't have those in place. So if we look at the PHP errors, we can see that almost all of them come from this one Smart Quiz Builder plugin. So that'll show you the source of where those are. So just another like point of information with Query Monitor, it can show you, hey, like here are all the things that are not only do you have these errors, but here's the source of them. So you might want to, consider a different quiz option because it's creating a lot of overhead on your server. Now I'm done.
No, this is excellent. I think walking through I've been using WordPress, I think probably 19, 20 years, and I learned a lot today just walking through some of the things that you did from the site health and the other. And, it occurred to me some takeaways for me were, as you look through, you're trying to get streamlined is what is the mission things that we need to do a part of the site, but then finding all these ways just to tune it, make it faster, sleeker, and then for a client to be able to make the decision. So smart quiz builder, how it's one that we saw just now in the query monitor. How integral is it? Are there other solutions? Is it bogging it down? But simply knowing that information, I think, allows the client to make better decisions on their work. You know, okay, gotta have it. I noticed something in there, I think you might have mentioned it, but there was, like, 2 separate backup plugins,
Right.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, just doing that walkthrough, I think you gave a blueprint for how to do that for your own website if you own your own website and running it, but also for clients, and so it was, I learned quite a bit.
Cool. Very good.
Well, hey, everybody, if you have questions for Ryan, we've got a couple more minutes to pose a question to him. Hit the chat or the Q&A button, and we'll surface those to him. I went along as you shared some of those plugins, put links back in here. They'll be in the show notes. Code Profiler, Query Monitor, AAA Option Optimizer, some of those into the chat. And of course, the Site Care Score plugin is in there too from Ryan's team. And you can check all those out.
Very good.
All right. If you have questions, share those now. And I know people are thinking. It's a lot of really good stuff. I think this is gonna be one people go over, but, I just love that inside view. Is, the site health stuff that comes with WordPress, is there an email function that will send out if things change, or is it just you have to be on that page?
Yeah, there aren't any hooks for, like, notifications or anything like that yet, so it is you have to visit the page to see if anything is out of sorts.
Because some of that, just like, for instance, database size, certain key things like your media folder size, it's so key information. Where you can kind of get a sense if you're moving website hosts and stuff like that. It's one of the one of the questions people ask as you migrate. But also got a lot of storage on something that could have an expanded cost for the client. Okay, we have a question here. Can you expand on what you said about the two backup plugins? I assume that you meant that is one too many.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are backups are an interesting thing, right? So they uh backups are there's 2 different kinds of backups. There's local backups and there's remote backups. So most of the plugins that you can find in the WordPress repository are going to create local backups of your website. And what that means is they're taking a backup of your website, typically your website files and your website database, and they're storing them to the same server where your website is hosted. Now, that's fine in some aspects. I mean, it's great to have a backup of any kind, but there are some risks associated with that too. One is essentially every time you run a backup job, the amount of storage that you're using is multiplied by how big your website is. So if I have a 500 megabyte website and I back it up, that means after one run, it's gonna be 1 gigabyte. And then if I run it again, it's gonna be 1.5 gigabytes. The other thing we've seen is some of these backup plugins actually have a actually store their backups in the WordPress installation itself. So then you get an exponential thing where what's happening is that 1.5 gigabyte website gets backed up, and then it becomes 3 gigabytes, and then it runs again, and then it becomes 6, and then it becomes 12, and then, and it literally doubles every single time. So, but those are local backups. And then there's another thing that is remote backups, which takes that same database and those same files, and it stores them in a remote server. So, Backblaze, Amazon Web Services, DigitalOcean Spaces, some kind of offsite storage. Those are fantastic because because it actually creates, if something were ever to go wrong on the server where your website lives, you'd have a full backup of your website that you'd be able to, bring forward and restore. Uh, it's so the number of backup plugins isn't necessarily, the number of plugins. Usually, what that's an indication of is there's some duplication of work going on. There are scenarios I could think of where you could have 2 that are running simultaneously doing different things, but that is, those that's kind of the exception. I think for the most part, having one, really solid backup solution, um, that keeps a copy off-site for you is the way to go. VaultPress is a popular one, Blog Vault, Solid Security has a backup, uh plugin that does, something similar. So, yeah, those are good options for that.
Great, and I'm glad you touched on the backup, the importance of having the remote backup. So if you're duplicating all your backups on your local server, but something happens to that, and that's where your backups are, you're out of luck. You've likely doomed it. That's why Brian was saying remote offsite somewhere else, and then easily restored back in the event of a crash or something happens. Janice says, question about media, just talking about best practices about media and images sizes. We know we've been on those sites where you're like, it's taking forever to load because it's coming straight off an iPhone photo roll and it hasn't been cropped. But just some best practices around image and media files.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something we see all the time. One of the things that is so just in terms of best practices, using doing any kind of preparation for an image. So, say for example, taking the image, and if you have it on your iPhone, actually here's a super quick tip that can save a lot of bandwidth. So if I let me see if I can find one here.
And want to go back to Paul's question while Ryan's looking for this. To the backup is check with your host and see what they do, but then still offsite. So something happens to that particular server you're on, whatever happens, but check with your host first. Then there's some great plugins Ryan just listed. Um, but the key is full backup offsite, the ability to come back and restore that easily when you make a mistake. Uh, One of the plugins that Ryan actually mentioned was part of the company I started. Now it's got a new name, but backups, restores, and migrations. So it's absolutely key. And like you said, if why have two when one is doing the job, and especially as you saw his chart when he did the code profiler, is like it's just adding over potential overhead if you've made sure you've got that remote backup, complete backup, and ability to restore back. All right, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is just a super quick tip, like, if you're on a Mac, you can do a you want images on your website should really be uploaded in either typically JPEG format. HVC is an image format that adds, that's anyway, it's typically not compatible, but on your own, like, if you're on a Mac, you can right click an image and there's, like, this quick actions menu that most people don't see. Actually, I need to share a little bit more, I think. Hold on. I'll just share my whole screen. It's fine. Um, so this quick actions menu will allow you to convert the image to JPEG, and you can actually change the size of the image when you convert it as well. And that's built in natively. So there's not extra, like, you don't need a bunch of extra tools as you're preparing images, but if you do any kind of editing, Photoshop or similar types of tools have an export function. It used to be called Save for Web back in the day, but now it's export as a JPEG or a .webp file, and you can do all that. You can do all that preparation on the website. There's also other tools like a popular one is called Squash that does you can do like bulk, right? So you could drag a whole library of photos into this, set the parameters that say, hey, I don't want any of these I want all these images to be resized at lower than 2000 pixels wide and a file size smaller than 1 megabyte. And you dump them in there and it just spits them all out in that new format. So that's another option. And then the last option is, so that's kind of like doing it, even though it's a little more work, it's a good idea. Like, it's really kind of nice to do it on your computer first because that'll save storage and things like that. The other option is there are plugins like Imagify and Short Pixel and a whole bunch of others that do all of this compression and resizing server side, but they still have to. So they'll do it as you so you can upload a big image to your WordPress install. It'll resize it. It'll compress it. It'll change it to the optimal format, all of those things. But but when it does that, you're still going to be using up a lot of disk space on your server that you wouldn't be otherwise. Web server storage is a lot more expensive than computer storage, like your home computer storage. So um but yeah, ideally, your kind of max width of images is about 2000 pixels maximum. JPEG and WebP formats are typically the most optimized. With JPEG, you can even typically scale down the quality to maybe like a 70 or an 80 quality with that and have it still be pretty lossless, meaning still retains all of the details of the original image. But typically speaking, if you have like a target file size of around 1 to 2 megabytes for a photo, that's kinda where you wanna what you wanna aim for.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ryan Sullivan, Chief of Staff at SiteCare.com. Go check out what they're doing. If you need maintenance and help and other projects, SiteCare is one of the best in the business. You just saw the architect behind everything they do, Ryan, walking you through how they do it. So if you need someone to just, hey, got it, now I just need you to take care of it, check out SiteCare.com. And we so much appreciate you, Ryan, coming on. This is your second webinar with us. Thank you. You're so gracious with your time and just sharing all of this to help people. And what's that? Rising tides lift all ships. So appreciate you so much today and the last time you've been here sharing your expertise and experience.
Yeah, great to be here. Great, thanks again for having me.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We'll see you next time at the A2 Hosting Show.